we have learned that Duce Robinson will commit on March 30th. If you're listening to this after that, then you probably already know what happened. But, man, it wasn't too long ago that we were talking about that. Not like it was a sure thing, but it certainly felt like it. And then the whole Major League Baseball situation happened, and it seems like Southern Cal will be pulling this rabbit out of the hat.
Yeah, it looked like Georgia was going to get Duce Robinson and Walker Lyons. Southern Cal's going to get both of those guys. You throw those two together with the mass defections from the tight end position with Ari Gilbert, Darnell Washington going pro, Brett Seither, Rylan Godey, and the injury to Pierce Spurlin. Here we are. We were talking. This is how quickly things can change. 3 months ago, we were talking about, oh my God, this tight end room. And listen, it's still super talented. It's still going to be great. But now Georgia's got 3 healthy tight ends, and it didn't get either of the late additions at tight end position it thought it was going to get. Todd Hartley's off to an incredible start next year's class with a 5-star already in the fold, and Landon Thomas. So there's no reason to panic. But, man, you just don't count the chickens before they hatch.
No, you can't. And while we were talking about it, I mean, we had just seen Georgia win back-to-back national championships or get close to it. If I'm mixing up my dates, I apologize. So it seemed somewhat realistic, but even in the back of my mind, I was like, this may be a little too good to be true. And I don't know what the Major League Baseball thing was. Maybe that was a smoke screen. Maybe it was just a way for him to buy some time and figure out what he really wanted to do. But, I mean, this does seem like a no-brainer. And if Southern Cal can finally piece together an offense outside of a quarterback, then maybe Lincoln Riley can make his way back to the college football playoff. Matthew C. is going to love that.
I mean, Lincoln wins one. The next one he wins will be his first as far as a playoff game goes. Maybe when the playoff expands and he has a little bit of an easier draw in the first round. I think he's a fantastic coach, but, I mean, there's no way to really beat around the bush here. They don't play good football. They don't play winning football when they play great teams. They just don't.
Yeah, let's see where they're at in the recruiting.
Well, and to a certain extent, there was that same thing at Oklahoma. I mean –
yeah, no doubt.
That Rose Bowl against Georgia was about the only time that it feels like Oklahoma showed up and played in a big game. Obviously, they had some big ones in their league, but on that national stage.
Here's Roos on Duce. Welcome.
Yeah, all things trending USC. I went in and put in my prediction for USC. I had earlier predicted Georgia as the spot, and I think if it had gone down around signing day, that would have been the case, to be honest with you. But USC just hung around and continued to trend there, and I think that there's a lot of people in his circle that are leaning that way as well. So, listen, it's not ideal. You certainly would prefer to have Duce Robinson on your team than not. I certainly understand that. But you got Pierce Spurlin and Lawson Lucky in this class. You feel really good about those guys. And you have the number 1 tight end committed for the class of 2024 already, with a number of top-tier guys at the position looking at you as well for that class. So, listen, Georgia's not in a bad spot in any position. They're not even close to a bad spot in the tight end position.
So, yes. All right. So Georgia's tight end position recruits itself right now. I mean, Todd Hartley's crushing it. But let's look at 23, okay? Duce Robinson goes to Southern Cal. All right, right now, you see where Georgia is, where Bama is, the Arch Manning party right there with Texas. Southern Cal's still only at 13 right now. I mean, they can't gain that much ground with Duce. And then you look at 24. So maybe I was speaking a little too soon. I mean, I don't even see them unless my eyes are just
there's
collectively not seeing them. Right? Like Southern Cal's is nowhere on the radar right now.
Is that true?
I don't see them.
They don't have anybody?
Sure. I got a 404 error code. But that's crazy to me, man. I mean, I was thinking like, okay, maybe, they've got their typical success at quarterback.
All right. So they have one commit in the class of 2024. Ironically, a tight end, Joey Olsen, the number 14 player at the position, 271 out of overall, and he's out of Oregon.
Yeah, that surprised me. That really shocks me.
Yeah.
So, I mean, what do you think the baseball thing was, Bruce? Right before you hopped on, I kind of was just wondering out loud. I guess in hindsight now, it seems kind of like a smokescreen that gave Duce a little bit of time to maybe reevaluate some things.
So. I don't think so at all. I think baseball was and still is a big consideration, and I think that there's a very real chance that he ends up pursuing and chasing that. I wouldn't write that off at all. I think that it makes sense to go ahead and get your spot, and then you kind of can pick and choose because you can see what the MLB wants to do with you and chase that if you want, or you can chase the college football thing if that's how you want to go. I mean, you've got both things at play. I think that the way I look at it, he's a winner either way, man. I mean, there's no downside for Duce Robinson in any of this. He wins.
Bruce, is it possible for him to chase both at the same time?
That's been kicked around a lot
because that's what I've seen kicked around, and I've seen the Los Angeles Dodgers kicked around as a possible landing spot, which makes USC make even much more sense.
Yeah, absolutely. No question about it. And wouldn't it make sense for
damn you Braves
and the Dodgers do their spring training in Arizona? There's a lot of that. Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of that being kicked around. I think that's all of these things are factors. I firmly believe that. And can he pursue both at one time? I think that he can.
How the hell would that work?
I think essentially what you'd have to do is create some sort of almost independent study type program and say like, hey, you can go do spring training with the team. I'm telling you, it's insane, man. It's the juggling and the steps that would be required would be pretty groundbreaking. But I don't think it's totally out of the question.
Hey, where there's a will, there's a way. I mean, you could certainly have him taking his classes, like I guess in a dugout somewhere. I don't know. I mean, you can do school anywhere these days. He could be just not taking classes at all. I mean, you bring up a directed study of baseball, Roos. That's fascinating.
Yeah, and not only that, I mean, you look at some of those teams out west, like the Dodgers stuff. I believe those teams do spring training in Arizona, where he's from. There's that connection too. But there are a lot of guys who, I mean, Kyler Murray kept things warm, while the baseball thing warm while he was there. I mean, the guys do it all the time. It's just a matter of, and Roos and I were talking about this earlier today. It's kind of weird. Baseball is the less physically taxing spot, but the window there to make an impact and to get yourself in position to play that game long term is so much quicker than the NFL. So much to the point that you have to kind of go for baseball first. You never see guys. I haven't can't recall very many guys. I mean, Bruce brought up Tim Tebow. We were talking earlier today, but you don't see very many go for football first and then, I'll do baseball later. It's, hey, I'm going to go give baseball a shot, 18, 19, 20 years old. Maybe you get all the way up to 21, 22, like Chris Winkie, Quincy Carter, those types. It doesn't work out. And then you decide to go be a Brandon Whedon and be an old man playing football at the college level and, still get out of school before Stetson Bennett.
Speaking of QBs, we got another commitment date, Jake, and another Jake Merklinger will commit as well. And he will decide between Georgia, Michigan State, North Carolina, and Tennessee. Where do we see this one headed right now, Roos?
I hate the Tennessee man's not with us tonight because the Vols look like the place for Jake Merklinger. And I think that makes a lot of sense. It's not a huge surprise. I think if he would have waited, it would have been better for Georgia, certainly more advantageous. Georgia had a great shot, given the the ties to the family, the in-state play. He admitted that was a pretty special offer when he received it. But the fact of the matter is, Tennessee's got him circled number 1 on the board and has been treating him that way all along. Georgia, on the other hand, has a quarterback already committed and has made no qualms about chasing Dylan Raiola very publicly. So, I get it from that perspective. I think
and Puglisi is just Wolf of Wall Streeting every time someone asks him, I'm not leaving.
Yeah. Absolutely, man. So listen, Merklinger, I think, is one of those kids that, I listen, I'm not saying that his commitment won't be solid and that Tennessee won't be able to hold on to him. I think all those things are true. I think that they will, but I could definitely see if things go south with Raiola, Georgia looping around in a big way and saying, hey, look, we still got a place for you if this is a place that you want to be. But right now, Tennessee definitely going to be the place that I expect that it goes on Thursday. And great pickup for the Vols, man. He's a tremendous player, and I think is a guy who could really thrive in Josh Heupel's system.
Are there any other names on Georgia's board for that second quarterback besides Raiola and Merklinger?
Yeah, somebody asked about that yesterday, and the ones that I pointed to are a couple of committed guys that are Luke Kromenhoek is one name to look at. He's an FSU commit out of the Savannah area and was a name that I heard tossed around the same time that Merklinger got his offer. I think it was kind of between those two guys. So Georgia could possibly look that direction. I haven't heard this name mentioned, and they may have no interest whatsoever, but a guy that intrigues me a lot in this class, because I think he's a different athlete from Ryan Puglisi, is Jakari Williams, who's committed to Georgia Tech. I think that he's an intriguing guy, great scrambler, good athlete. I think that he would bring a really nice dynamic. So he's an in-state guy too, and I think that would be compelling. I don't know that they're going to chase him though. And look, maybe you take the portal route. I mean, that's not out of the question. What's definitely not out of the question though, they're not taking just one guy in this class. It's not going to happen. They're going to go find a second guy in some form or fashion. We'll see who that is. I think, you got to make it through the Raiola thing, and then you go back to the drawing board after that, probably.
Jake, when you talk about, potentially being able to circle back with Merklinger, I'm not saying that this is the same in any way, shape, or form, but it just reminds me of how delicate a balance that can be. And it reminds me of the whole Zach Calzada situation where Georgia basically had to come in, give him an offer late, and it doesn't work out. And, for one reason or another, I don't know if he felt burned or he was committed to A&M or it just wasn't going to happen. And I may be misremembering some of the details on that. But at the quarterback position, it's just so hard, to keep tabs and lock in with the guys that you want to get. And if they don't work out, you got to hope that there's another option there. And it seems like Georgia is solid in this class. It's not the same deal where they kind of had to scramble in that particular class. But that's, to me, just an example of how things can go wrong, I guess.
Sure. I mean, we talked about on the board today how lucky I think that they were that Jake Fromm entertained, the idea of coming back on board after he had already committed to Alabama. And they'd taken Bailey Hockman in that class, or they'd had Bailey Hockman committed. Kirby Smart shows up to town. Obviously, everything's kind of scattered to the wind, and they have to push reset on that. But yeah, it's a delicate cycle. And listen, I mean, should these kids feel honored and blessed to have these scholarship offers? Yes, but at the same time, they're 17-year-old guys with egos, man, and there's a big ego that it comes with playing quarterback. You have to feel like you're the man to do that, and there's something to that. So I don't blame any of those guys for how they feel, how they don't feel. I will say Georgia's done an exceptional job, I think, over the last couple of years of basically just leaving the door open for guys and saying, hey, we wish you well. Good luck on what you choose. We'll be here if you choose something different. I think that you've seen that play out in a lot of these recruitments, and a lot of the reason that guys have transferred back. Smoke Bowie most recently kind of fits that mold of, hey, we wish you well. Good luck. And then he decides to move on. He comes back home.
I mean, Michael Williams was certainly that when
Yeah.
he committed to USC.
Yeah.
And you never know, man. You never. I mean, and I'm kind of sort of trying to be funny here, kind of not, but you never know, when Coach B is going to get busted with a Waffle House waitress and lose his job. He loses his job, and that's who he had the connection with, and then the door is wide open.
Or suddenly he becomes the head coach of Central Michigan. I mean, the wide receivers coach that you fell in love with becomes the Central Michigan head.
Man, I thought you were referencing something there, and I was like, there's
something we don't.
No, it's like
Waffle House in Central Michigan.
But it's like those kids, the Ohio State commits, right? The Jeremiah Smith has talked about, I'm keeping it open in case something happens with Brian Hartline. Well, that's very reasonable in my opinion, because somebody would do very, very well to hire Brian Hartline.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, 100%.
And those kids, I think, are smart to do that, and I think that,
and schools know that too. I mean, that's why Sammy Brown commits to Georgia. Let's say if Georgia gets Sammy Brown, Clemson's going to be all over him, man. I mean, they are going to be all over him. Not only that, but let's say Raylan Wilson, right? I mean, Michigan would have been absolutely stupid to say, because it was a one-time commit to burn a bridge there.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because Glenn Schumann gets a job, you start telling Raylan Wilson, hey, dude, come on, you loved us once. Glenn Schumann's not there anymore. Come love us again.
Absolutely.
Ro, we spoke about
happening. I don't.
What's that?
I said, are you suggesting tampering's happening? Come on, man.
100% happens everywhere. Michigan does it. Georgia does it. Ohio State does it. Everybody does it.
Everybody.
You ain't tampering. You ain't trying.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's why I thought it was so funny with the AD thing. Everybody's like, "Well, tampering, yeah, dude."
Uh-huh.
I mean, come on, dude. How do you think Ra Thomas and Dominic Lovett ended up Georgia?
They just love the grill. By the way, the grill opening back up. I just learned. So that's
oh man, I can't wait to get an armpit hair in my feta fry.
Hopefully, it's from the armpit. Ro, before we move on to chopping wood, we talked about kind of the culture shift from Georgia's Sugar Bowl no-show against Texas, what Kirby Smart learned from that, just to put a bow on this quarterback conversation. What do you think Kirby Smart learned from the whole Justin Fields, Jake Fromm situation? Do you think he's changed how his staff approaches recruiting these guys, or is it pretty much just the same and that was just a blip?
Yeah, I don't think they changed a whole lot. I think you try to go out there and you go get a dynamic guy, and you're honest. I mean, they've done something here in the last few years that's allowed them to hang on to quarterbacks at a rate that nobody else has been able to hang on to them. I don't know if it was just they got the right guys. Not sure what's going on there, but I do think that I'll say I believe this way until I die. I mean, there probably was some miscommunications. There's some falsehoods that came out in the Justin Fields thing. They probably promised to do some things. Justin Fields probably committed to do some stuff that he probably didn't do either. We know that the attitude wasn't always great, and how could it be with an 18-year-old facing some adversity that he's never faced before? But ultimately, Georgia played the quarterback that year that gave him the best chance to win that year, and you can't play for 2019 and 2018 when you got a team that was, a good quarter of football away from playing in the college football playoff. With that said, I don't think that it has changed their philosophy on how they handle quarterbacks. You just got to stockpile the position. You got to go to get the best player you can get as often as you can get him. Get the guy and keep recruiting it, because, your backup in a lot of instances these days is going to be a true freshman. Yeah. And that's just the way it's got to be. And I do think that taking two quarterbacks is kind of the new genius move on how to do this thing, because it's how you end up with 3 and 4 quarterback rooms. And those make coaches feel a lot better, especially whenever you can basically run, if you're Georgia and you've got a full roster like they do, Georgia can run 3 teams basically every practice and get everybody a bunch of reps whenever you're in these spring drills and fall camp modes, and you're in, hey, let's get better mode, not game plan, you can get a lot done like that.